Well, I just had a very weird phone call, but good weird. As what's his face, Howard Wolowitz would say, but that's not really what he said. He said creepy good or creepy bad, not weird good or weird bad. But anyway, yeah, so anybody who listens to these, I still don't really know like how the listening patterns and stuff, and I've been thinking about going back to the old channel because really at the end of the day, like what I was doing with what I was doing by leaving that was two reasons. I was bothered by Google's habits, or however you want to say it, of basically not respecting your privacy in any way. And I was bothered by the fact that I didn't know who was listening. And the fact is, that's going to keep happening, and I knew that even starting the new channel. But I wanted to talk about a few things, and I just felt like, well, I need to start a new channel if I'm going to do that. But I don't really know. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go back to the new channel, the old channel. But I don't know. I'll figure it out. But my point is, like, I don't want to do things out of a fear-based motivation. And I feel like on some level that was just sort of neurosis and fear, and it was causing me to not really even be put into the algorithm, and I think it was because of the content of the videos, you know. Anyway, so anybody who listens to these will know that I've spoken about a person who I knew when he used to live out here, and that he moved away, and that he was elderly, and that I believed that he would that he was no longer with us, but he was my only friend when he was out here. And that's not really an exaggeration. It's basically the only person. When I say friend, I'm talking about someone I would hang out with. I would go to his house and hang out and like watch TV like a little bit, not really, but like I would just do a few things with him occasionally. In fact, one time he was living at my house, and I kind of had to say to him, like, this is like a temporary thing, you know? And it was. Like, it wasn't even really that I was kicking him out, but, like, I had to say, like, I'm getting kicked out, and these people are going to come soon, and they're going to, like, basically ransack the house. I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but that's basically what they did. In a sort of whirlwind of just throwing everything in dumpsters, so he had to leave. But I was talking to somebody, and she mentioned his name and that he had called her, or that it was something weird like that. And I said, I thought he was dead. And she said, well, not as of yesterday, or something, not as of last week. And so I really thought this person had died, because I had texted him a few times over the years and he never responded. But that can even happen with people that aren't old. It sort of depends on like how busy you are and stuff like that. But yeah, so he she gave me his number, and I called him, even though I was kind of like skeptical. I wasn't skeptical as to what she said, but I was like, did she really give me his number? Like, is it actually, like, am I actually going to be able to talk to him? So I called him, and he was just like very happy to hear from me. And I haven't spoken to this person in something like close to 4 years. I'm not really exactly sure, but and that's why I thought he had died, because I've had no communication with him in the past about 4 years. So he was telling me, so apparently he has cancer, and he was telling me about how he refused treatment, and that I asked him, like, what are you, like, are you on Vicodin? What's going on? Like, how are you dealing with pain? And he said, I'm not on anything. And he's always had a little bit of, like, exaggerating, like, he's not a liar, but I don't really know what he means. Like, that seems unbelievable to me. But the point is, he refused treatment, and he said that he feels basically fine, and that he just lives with this diagnosis. And he was kind of telling me, what he said was like, because I asked him how he was doing, because he sounded normal, and he said, well, in terms of my health, I have terminal cancer. And then I asked him what he had, and he said, and by the way, this person is a former doctor, so he already knows about like whatever he has, but it was, I think he said colorectal cancer. And I asked him like, I said, I'm sorry to hear that. And I mean, he's old. He's 80. I had to tell him his age. I mean, that was weird to me. So his thinking process isn't exactly the same as it always was. But he knew who I was, and he was very happy to hear from me, and he kept reiterating it. And I had to tell him, based on his birth year, like, you're 85. And he's like, no, I have to be older than that. And I was like, no, that's the math. You're 85. And it was also confusing because the woman that I was speaking to from before told me that he was 88. And I was like, oh, I guess he was a little older than I realized. But anyway, so yeah, he said, I have terminal cancer, and to be honest, I'm kind of looking forward for the term to end. And I thought, wow, that's kind of like and he didn't mean it in some sort of morbid way, in the sense that he's very depressed, because he's sort of like the opposite. It's a weird thing that we became friends, because I'm sort of a gloomy person, and I'm not morose, and that's partly why I sometimes say that I don't really have depression. I don't really have that problem. I just have a problem of intense isolation, and that I need to get back to the city, which is what I told him. And but anyway, so it's kind of strange that we became friends, but we did. And I guess it's partly because he didn't expect so much of me, like other people do. And by that I mean in the sense of like, well, you're this age, you're still relatively young. I mean, I'm not really young anymore, but like people used to say like, what are you doing? Like, why don't you go back to school? And like, what, why don't you have a girlfriend? And like, you're a perfectly nice looking person or whatever, and stuff like that. And that kind of thing where you're sort of like thinking like, what's the deal with this weirdo, And he seems like maybe he's kind of intelligent, but like he keeps working in retail, and he's like a dead-end job or whatever, and he doesn't have a girlfriend. And so that kind of thing, he wasn't putting that on me, and I think that's partly why we were friends. But when he said, I'm looking forward to for the term to end, I was like, wow, like I think a lot of people feel that way that don't have any kind of cancer or even any terminal illness, But it's noteworthy that he, like I said, he refused treatment, and he said that every single doctor or physician that he's spoken to has praised his decision and not questioned it. First of all, he's a doctor himself, so he kind of knows that chemotherapy is a very mixed bag, and it's still somewhat controversial. I'm not saying, I'm not taking a stance on it. I'm just saying, generally, it's understood that it's not necessarily like someone has cancer and they take chemotherapy and they get better. Like it's not straightforward like that, But he's been alive now with this diagnosis for 3 years, and I told him, like, is this partly why you never called me or texted me back, and like you found this thing out and then you didn't want to really talk to people? And he said, yeah, that is what happened. But he's kind of a religious guy, not in the weird way where you're constantly telling people to just trust in God, or like where you proselytize or whatever, and you're assuming that other people are going to respond to it positively, or that it's going to help them, and I'm trying to figure out how to describe this, but he's religious, but not pushing it on people, whatever. That's basically what I mean. So I said to him, like, so you believe in an afterlife? And he was like, oh, absolutely. And he said, and if there isn't one, then I'll die happy anyway. So, I think that's a pretty good approach. But it was sort of a contrast to me because, as far as I know, I have a problem that I don't really talk about very much, which is a neurological thing. But otherwise, as far as I know, I'm basically healthy. But at the same time, like, I live with this sort of anxiety. And he's like the opposite. He's perfectly happy and he's happy to be alive, even despite what he said, because he told me, like, every day is like a new day for him, and looks forward to seeing who's going to drop by or something to that effect. And he lives in some sort of, I don't know if it's a retirement community or something, but yeah, he did move away. So the woman who I spoke to, who told me his number, she told me like a few really wrong things. Like, she said he lived in the city. So I was thinking, like, I would. If I knew he lived in the city, I would have gone to visit him. But, I can't do that because he lives in South Carolina. But he just seemed sort of like almost elated to hear from me. And he told me, like, I just want you to know, like, that you've really made me happy to hear your voice again. And it was nice to hear that because, like, I don't it's not that I constantly get hostility from people, because I don't, but I walk around with feelings of essentially worthlessness. I don't really know, there might be a better word for it, but that's kind of how I feel a lot of the time. My shoe is making a noise that I don't know what the origin of it while I'm walking around, so I don't know how audible it is. But anyway, so the other weird thing that happened, which was sort of like kind of like a synchronicity, but I texted someone who I haven't spoken to in 6 or 7 months, and I texted her sort of a silly thing, but the point is, so she, and I didn't have her number for a long time. Somebody who listens to these recently gave me her number. So I didn't really even intend on texting her, partly because, like, well, I know that she has my number, so, like, if you want to, she stopped talking to me because I said something that offended her, and then she, like, blocked me on Twitter and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, well, you don't want to talk to me, fine. So my sort of, like, outlook on it was like, if we're ever going to talk again, I'm going to wait for her to call me or text me or something, because I don't know the degree to which she's upset with me or whatever. So I don't need someone like that in my life, so, but I texted her, because I thought, well, why not? And the first thing she replied back was like a hugging emoji thing, on, that you have on the iPhone, that looks strangely like the same. It looks very similar to the reel-to-reel, like, video camera emoji. It's kind of confusing unless you're looking up close. So, but yeah, I was just thinking, like, well, apparently that, I would assume that means she's happy to hear from me. And it's like, well, I didn't stop talking to you. It was the other way around. So it's just kind of strange. But, everyone is strange in their own way. Like, people, I guess, don't necessarily behave in the way that you would expect. Anyway, that's about all. But so yeah, it's almost like hearing from a dead person, because I had made that assumption based on really relatively little evidence, but it was enough for me, because obviously something had happened to him, and then he apparently didn't really feel like talking, but then it kind of changed. And yeah, so the rumors of his death are greatly exaggerated, and the only source was me, because the only people I've talked to, I said I think that he's dead, and other people would be like, well, how do you know that? And like, And then, but eventually people would be like, yeah, well, I guess he probably is then. And, he's not. So that was good to hear. That's about all. Thanks for listening.